very likely it would be uninsurable.
I don't know if anyone's aware of walking down the swimming area, just to the north of it. There's a marker there. The first one goes up to 4.5 metres, I think it is. It's obviously relative to the low water mark, high water mark. But then there's another one in the trees that goes up to 7 metres. So either they've just made a mistake and made too many posts or whatever, too many markers. I don't think that's the case. If you talk to Mac Harvey's wife, who first come here in '49, she remembers waves breaking up over where the Ilmenite is now. So I think the level markers are there for a reason.
Thank you, Ryan. We'll come back to that. We'll come back to that question later on if you don't mind. Now, according to our agenda, the agenda that's printed and provided to me, the Rainbow Gorge people are going to will be given an opportunity to present their case for 10 minutes with a 10-minute question period. I'll ask Mr. Crafty or his colleague to present their case.
Mr. Dish, did you put the disc in?
It's in there.
On me mobile.
No, we're going to
Oh no, it's not in there. Disc is still here. Hey? Yes. Yeah, we're a bit chat.
We need a hole.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's one unanimous decision coming out of here tonight.
Where is it then?
Yeah, well, we still haven't got it.
The backpackers have got a basketball court.
There you go.
Where are they?
Okay, it's the first time I'm a bit nervous. I've never done a presentation like that. Look, I think we've done this sort of in two sections. First, to give the public an understanding on where we are coming from, I thought it's probably best to go a step back and look a bit at the basics. For me, the basics are we've made an application, and council, a lot of the councillors here now today, they are going to make a decision at some stage on this application. And obviously we've got a public meeting here which is scheduled to pass some resolutions. How do I get the thing to click on?
There you go, just click each side you want. Just click that button.
Yeah.
Or you can go forward and back, forward, back.
Okay, Bob, who's the project manager, is an engineer. He knows more about the technicalities than me. He will then later on go a bit into the detail of the application, time allowing. I'm going to have a look a bit at the process of council's decision on the application, because I think it's important that you understand where we are coming from in this, because there's a lot of misunderstandings about it. Especially if there's been some public sort of statements that say, look, if you don't like this plan, it should be refused, just tell council. Council don't have the power to stop this. All we need is 7 votes. Now, I'm not going to comment on this right now, but this is sort of something I'd like to clarify, because this is sort of erasing some expectations into the decision council has to take, which I think may not be fully spot on. In a very general term, if you look at decisions authorities have to make, you've got, and I'm sorry if it sounds a bit lecturing, but it's a dry material, it's nothing I can do about it. So discretionary decisions like if council should decide to build a town hall in Rainbow Beach or should not, they can do that, and the only people checking on that decision, if it's a good one or a bad one, is really the electorate, the people living here. They just don't re-elect council if they get the wrong decisions out of it. There's a second set of decisions, like a parking fine or building application, where council is the executive. Council is applying the law. The decisions where council's applying the law, they are not good and bad, they are either incorrect or correct. And there's an authority above council looking that these laws apply correctly, and that these are the courts. Now, the application we've put in front of council is one of these second decisions council has to make. And if we look a bit at the law is reasonably specific. It puts out some tests to our application. So it says, look, your application has to comply with a certain number of things, like the Fisheries Act, or looking at the well-being of the marine wildlife, the Transportation Act, looking at traffic problems, Coastal Management Act, looking at erosion problems or flooding problems, Vegetation Management Act, looking at protection of regional ecosystems. So one of the things the law prescribes is our application has to comply with these laws. They're usually not checked by council themselves. Council usually sort of refers that back to state agencies and they come back with an opinion. There's other policies which council administers directly, like asset sulfate soils. And as a third element, there's a planning scheme, and that's council's planning scheme, and council establishes if we comply with that. And once it's done these 3 compliance checks, that establishes the application's merits. And the law even goes further and says, look, if it's in conflict with the strategic plan, or if there's no planning grounds to justify it anyhow, council must refuse it. So that's sort of in line with what the law says. And the nature of decision is of a kind that the council has to assess the application and see if we have complied. And accordingly, we have had to demonstrate, and Greg is quite right there, we have to demonstrate to council that we meet all these checks. And that's why it's taken us 7 years. And that's why this bastard is so thick. Because we had to go through all this. And now if you ask me this evening, and that's sort of what I've tried to respond to, why should council say yes to this application? I cannot demonstrate to you the contents of 4,000 pages in 10 minutes. But I guess my answer to that is, our view is we do comply, and our view is council, if it shares these views that we did comply, should approve the application because it complies with the law. I know that doesn't sound very satisfactory. We just say this is the correct decision. There's of course the second element out there, and that is a bit different from what is in the law and applying the law. That is a question, well, why should Rainbow Beach not be afraid of an application like ours? And that deals in a lot of other concerns the community may have. On a short notice, I think that a lot of stuff, a lot of rumours about our development, about the bad things about our development, are plain and simply not quite correct. And in that sense, I think I'll get Bob to take you through a few of the issues which have been raised in the invitation and address them.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks very much. Look, Greg can say there's the effluent runoff's a problem. I can say we've got documents there that says it's not. Greg can say water's a problem. I've got documents there that say it's not. We can argue backwards and forwards that until we're blue in the face. But I think the thing, as Andreas has highlighted, that is important to understand is that it's not finally up to whether Greg thinks it's right or I think it's right or anything else. There are government bureaucrats that check this, go through it with a fine-tooth comb. Now, they, before they're going to sign that off, they're not guys that are going to stick out their neck. They will check those things very carefully. And I think there's been a lot. The thing that confuses it is that numbers get bandied around. We get told that there's houses going to fall off the edge of cliffs into the sea, etc. These guys check that very carefully. They think 45 metres is a reasonable buffer. And they've checked that out very carefully. Now, 45's fine. We'll make doubly sure, we'll add another 50 onto it. We'll say it's 95. No, we'll go another 50 metres and say 145 metre buffer. And that's what we've had to comply with. With the water the same way. In terms of Greg saying, there's parts of the site of 2.5 metre AHD. There probably are parts of 2.5. And therefore there is a risk, if there is another half metre increase in the level of the ocean, that those areas that are 2.5 metre AHD will be a problem. You're probably right. So what's the level? The minimum level to build on, 4. Under that, you can't build on Rainbow Shores to below RL4. the guys that are signing off on these things.
Is that to the floor level or slab?
We'll come back to one in a
I just needed him to clarify the RL. Is the RL to the floor level of the house? If I build a house on stumps, is that to the floor level of the house, or is that to the site level?
Site level 4, floor level 4.5. So it's the
Oh, just
land.
the benefit.
Yeah, no, okay. So the level of the land is 4. So this is where things have been confused, I think. We throw up the issue of the ilmenite stockpile. That's on an area that Greg's highlighted for future development. You know, we want the development around town, and one of the key sites for development around town is that site, which you've correctly said should be fenced off because it's contaminated. So I mean, to try and say that it is better to be developing around town on contaminated sites. In comparison to doing a low level, and we can argue about it, but you go out there and have a look. And the proof of the pudding is in the eating. What's been done in stage 1 is a low level development. And the impact compared to anywhere else you like to look up and down the coast is minimal. So the opportunity is there to either develop intensely around Rainbow Beach Township, which is what Greg's putting forward, or to look at a low-level development up along the peninsula. Now, surely that is the better of the options. But I mean, finally we come back to... Yep, okay. Time. Finally come back to, as Andrea said, there is a process there to ensure that the development is done correctly. There are government officers that check that out to make sure that it is done properly. There has been a deal done, an agreement between the state government, with council backing, with Rainbow Shores Proprietary Limited to allow that development to occur if certain things are achieved. Now, we're trying, and it's in that lease, it's a development lease. It's not a recreational lease, it's not a fishing lease, it's a development lease. And that's a commitment that the government, which is all of us, one way or another we like it, that's a deal the government has done in relation to that piece of dirt. Now what's being proposed is to tear up that agreement, to say, no, we're going to welsh on that deal. We would rather have a nice recreational area up along the beach front there, rather than have it developed. But the fact is, the deal's been done. There has been a development... Excuse me, there is a development lease, I emphasise again, it's a development lease that the government has issued. And it is subject to certain things being met. And that's what's being done.
The deal has not been done. If it is subject to certain things taking place.
And no, there's certain criteria to be met, and that is what has been done.
I don't know who you are.
Ladies and gentlemen, look,
Andre's did it.
what we're looking for, the time is nearly expired for the Rainbow Shores presentation. Please, the time just about expiring, and the questions and answers will come very shortly. And but the time has expired, so I'm trying to keep to a time frame according to the agenda. Now, you guys stand there for the microphone in case you want to stick back on it. But certainly, ladies and gentlemen, there's a 15-minute session now, equal time for questions as given to Mr. Wood. And so, are there any questions? We're going to have someone on the different here because we're going to be working with one microphone. Can everybody hear me at the back there?
Excuse me.
Thank you.
Was were the same specifications required for stage 1? Did you have to meet the same specifications?
Yes, like in terms of the planning, obviously the planning scheme has evolved since, but we have to at the time meet the same. We have to meet the government regulations which were in place at the time.
Well, weren't the first houses built halfway deep in water?
No.
Yes. It showed it. In the garages in the first stage, in the first street, the water was halfway up the garage. And I believe all the electricity and everything had to be raised because of
You
it.
also went underwater? How many times? Not one time. No, but it's a fine.
Anyhow, I don't quite understand your question. Could we move on?
Has the question been put? Has the question been answered? Next question, please.
It's on. It's on.
Look, I'm going to make a couple of points before I ask a question. First, the town itself lacks amenities, right?
Hold the microphone up so everybody.
Lacks amenities, public amenities, toilets, and they could be improved. There is no sitting facilities for the tourists, for visitors to our town. Nothing. The streets are not cleaned as often as Gympie. Twice a week. If you have a long weekend, come back on Sunday and you'll find that our rubbish bins stink and no one empties them. No one empties them. No one waters or mows the lawn unless it's absolutely overgrown. It needs, all you have to do is to make a comparison between Rainbow Beach, go to Bargara. This is what councillors should do. Go and have a look at other towns around, up and down the coast. But the main question is, you are going to increase the population of this town in about 10 years, threefold, right? You are going to create a tavern, am I right? Okay, that's what I was told. But if that's the, let's say you just increase the population.
Get to the question. Other people are here.
I know. It's all right. Last time you did something wrong. You said that you were here and you missed a very good TV show to tolerate us. Don't do that again. My question is this. How is town going to benefit? What is the benefit to this town of you developing that area? That's my question.
No, I think I've been. I'm quite fine to answer the question without. Like, I guess what the benefit you'll get out of stage 2 is you'll have a carefully planned development which will have economic benefits in terms of jobs, social benefits in terms that it's going to add to a diversified community, and it's going to be done by somebody who lives locally, and it's going to be done, it's something that's already tested. We've already done stage 1, and any shortfalls in stage 1, e.g. with vegetation protection, have been tightened up in stage 2. But that's probably not what you were like. We have lodged an application, and as council's decision can only look at the application, so I can't go out there and telling the community of any other contributions or benefits they'll get. What I can say is, in terms of an attitude, that there are other developments once they reach a stage where council negotiates an outcome. There is a preparedness on our side to significantly contribute towards any facilities this town may need, but it is not part, like we are prepared to do that, but it is not part of this application because it's not concerning. What it further does, it puts aside land for community uses, substantial land for community uses, for other things the community may
How does the town benefit? You haven't told us anything. You've just kept on talking about something that has no benefit to town itself. We need facilities in this town, and what you are going to create is something else that has no benefit to us whatsoever. All we can do is increase the population, which is already, the town's facilities don't have capacity.
So obviously these facilities will have to be expanded, and it is up to council to ensure that these facilities can go. And we are, if that involves that the developer has to contribute to these facilities, we are prepared to do that.
Why don't you commit yourself before you go ahead?
Because
you're going to develop, you're trying to develop, and say you're going to develop.
Are there any other questions back there? Right at the back, please.
you can have the commitment.
Hang on, ladies and gentlemen.
You talk about low-level development in Rainbow Shores. Do you plan to have 6-storey levels in Rainbow Shores Stage 2? And have you already got approval for 6-storey levels in Rainbow Shores Stage 1?
We have got historic approval for 6-storey buildings in stage 1, and what we've put in stage 2. Okay, at least I believe we have, so maybe I'm wrong. And in stage 2, we have put there an application which at the moment asks for 3 stories, but leaves the option open that if we would go through an same process again with public notification, with submissions, that council can decide for a very limited part to increase that story height, but 6 stories is not part of the current application.
Good question.
Well, I'm following around from 80 years old, I've got the whole 80 years living on a beach on there. You talk about being 4 metres above high water, but I don't care whether it's 24. The ocean undermines it and washes it away. And if that ocean rose a half a metre, that'd be gone in 30 years for half a peninsula. I've seen these rays, and I've seen cyclones. You can have the biggest cyclone in the world, as long as the tide's only 6 foot or less, they do nothing. You get an 8-foot tide, it disappears. And if the ocean rose 18 inches, you wouldn't have a peninsula. Now that's a fact of life. There's not...
Can I come to the question, please?
I watched the whole place wash away.
Yeah, but the question.
It's not about a question. I'm trying to state facts, and that's a fact. It's not a question.
Then am I allowed to
talking about 4 metres above high water. I don't care whether it's 24. It undermines and falls in. And if it rose a half a metre, you wouldn't have Rainbow Shores or any peninsula. Why this is the question. Why approve a development on the coast when we're already in trouble everywhere?
Trying to get everybody on the
Can I maybe answer the question? Is that all right?
Statement, I believe.
What's the question?
I need Mike. Mine, simple. You seem to be suggesting with the legal stuff that council has to consider it, so are you suggesting that people's opinion has no value in this process? If you're actually saying that, why would you bother spending your time suggesting that 75% of the applicants were stupid and just signed a letter that they didn't bother reading, and that another 20% were influenced by the evil mind control genius? Seriously, if public opinion doesn't have that much influence on council, it's all a legal thing, and council has to just consider the legal stuff. Why would you bother suggesting that people who just signed a form letter were not worth it, their opinions weren't worth it? Why would you suggest that the evil genius here putting evil ideas into people's heads and influencing their things? Why would you bother wasting time on it if people's opinions had no bearing on it?
Can I answer this? Like, I can obviously only answer part of the question because I can't comment on the things which Mark knows I said and I don't. But in terms of the process outlined, it is pretty clear there is a public consultation process to get the public's input to actually scrutinise if we got it right. Like, we are saying we comply with what the regulations ask us to comply with. We may have screwed it up. We may have got it wrong. And that's where the public has to have an opinion on that. But they, like, the planning scheme foresees for this zone a mixed urban residential tourist development. If the people don't like that, we shouldn't have that planning scheme. The planning scheme sets out the criteria we have to meet, and if we meet them, that's what council has to consider. And the public is there to say, if we don't comply with the planning scheme, the public has got a right to point it out to council and to tell council that they should take that into account.
We're now in the general forum, the general session part of this agenda, and so if there are any questions to either the applicant or to the common sense, please indicate which one you'd like to answer the question. So we are now in that public session, general session forum. So the lady at the back there, please, Ms. Gilby.
My question is to Andreas. I just want to let you know that I was one of those people who filled out the pro forma. I did so not from any sort of mind-bending persuasion by anyone. I happen to understand planning quite well. I didn't have the time to do a detailed submission, but I do have that the council treats that submission that I wrote as coming from someone who is intelligent, and I suspect that the rest of the people who filled out the pro formas were of exactly the same ilk, and maybe they're going to let the council know tonight that as well. However, I do have two questions, and they go to points made by you and by your colleague. The first one is the point that comes up very frequently that says this deal has been done between the government and us on the development lease. That we have to, that there has to be development on this site. Now, in fact, I think that absolutely misrepresents the case. The lease does say there should be development, but it has to be subject to the council's own planning scheme. So it is not a given in that regard at all, and I think it's disappointing if it's presented in any way, shape or form like that. I'm very familiar with a council facing a very similar situation with a development lease in a council to the Shires, to the south of us, where that council decided that the development control plan for that site would say no development whatsoever, and in fact eventually bought that site back and it's now a national park. So there are precedents. And then the other point that was made was that you were saying that the planning scheme actually requires this to be a mixed-use development. And in fact, when you read the planning scheme, it actually says that before there can be any development done on this site, it has to pass extremely stringent tests. And so the guts of what those submissions from the community are about, and the guts of what the council has to do, is in fact assess whether it does, and what this community is saying very strongly is that we don't believe it meets those tests. So in those two issues that you've put to this meeting tonight, I believe that you are misleading the people here, and I'd like you to respond to that.
Well, I'll start with the second one, and I agree with, maybe I put it the wrong way. I think we have to pass the tests set up by us in the planning scheme. I thought that had come through. We have to pass, that's why we've written all this application. It's going to be up to council to decide if we pass this test or not. So that was, I never wanted to suggest anything else, but the planning scheme, if, for example, there's some desires out there to make this a recreation area, or to use this site for camping, or indeed to propose for our site, rather than say a mixed development use, something completely different, that is not, I'm not a lawyer, but from what I understand, that is not one of the tests it has to pass. But it has to pass every test prescribed. It has to address the planning scheme and its entirety, and I agree with that. But as I said, I'm not a lawyer. Then the second part, maybe Bob, like in terms of, there is definitely not any fixed agreement that this development has to proceed in its current form between the state government, council, us. I don't know, I don't think Bob wanted to express that, although I had a bit, made me twinkle a bit too. There is, what it was, a basic understanding between council, the state government and us as to the land use at the time.
But not this council, though.
That was 30 years ago.
Not this council.
I'm just saying that.
Council is a council, I'm sorry.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
No, it's not.
one minute, guys. The council is representative of us, the people.
That's
We
right.
voted them in. The council should represent what we want. This is our say. The council is our council.
It might sound very stupid, but we have bought the development lease on a site which gives us the possibility to develop if we meet very stringent conditions and it is a tenure we've got over there.
But I will point out though, Andreas,
May I
that
finish?
your lease is for
May I
land
finish?
that is zoned rural.
Yeah, may I finish?
So there's no implied development, housing development in a rural lease.
Of course there is. It's just this one side. Anyhow, we can. What I just wanted to finish off is there are certain expectations we've got and have been confirmed in the lease, have been confirmed in the Great Sandy Management Plan, have been confirmed in the planning scheme that we can develop some sort of a development with a mixed development on there. It doesn't say which development, it doesn't say how many numbers should live there. That's what part of this process is, to determine that. But if council just decides, say somebody has got a freehold piece of land, they can't just build a house on there. They have to fulfill certain conditions before they build. And if somebody buys a freehold land and we put it at a public meeting and they say, well, I think you shouldn't build there, we want a barbecue area there for the public, I think you wouldn't be too happy either.
No, they just build a dam instead.
Anyway, hang on, please. I'm not referring to the lady, please.
No, it's true.
Is there anything that says you cannot on-sell that land if you do get the development?
Basically, just get it approved and on sell it.
Yeah.
Which is what most, or not most, but a lot of developers do. They'll build stage one, set a precedent, get it all approved, get the DA approval, and then on sell it. And then leave the problem.
May I, like, I guess there's probably two answers to this question. What we've tried to do in stage two, the kind of development we're doing is restricted by the planning scheme. So they're not cutting down of trees, the preserving of the dunes, all these things. We put as much as we could into the planning scheme. So even if we could sell the lease, these obligations in their entirety would pass on to whoever bought it. But the answer is, I am not aware that we can sell a lease. A lease is a contract between us and the government, and while the planning approvals are in, we still don't own that land. So we are relying on a contract between us and the government to turn that from a leasehold piece of land into a freehold piece of land. This obligation the government would probably not have towards another party than us. But I'm not aware.
Do we have the microphone here, please? And then the lady in the red is next, please. You're now red. The lady in the
sorry, Andreas, can you sell Rainbow Shores Proprietary Limited is the first question, which would mean the lease goes with it. And the second question I've got is, isn't community need one of the tests you have to pass to get a change in the rezoning scheme? And don't the people here demonstrate that there is no community need for that down in this area?
Well, to answer the first question, I presume I could sell the whole company with everything we've started, but that's definitely not what our family and our father came here for. We didn't come in for the money. Believe me, we've got an answer for that. Now, can I?
Excuse me, please. Please, come on, please.